Hello and welcome as we continue our mini Bible studies this week as we prepare for Palm Sunday, the 28th of March, 2021. Today, looking at the Psalm, which is Psalm number 31, verses 9 through 16. First, let me read for you the Psalm and then share with you some of the reflections that I've gathered for today. Have mercy on me, O Lord, for I am in trouble. My eye is consumed with sorrow, and also my throat and my belly. For my life is wasted with grief, and my years with sighing. My strength fails me because of affliction, and my bones are consumed. I am the scorn of all my enemies, a disgrace to my neighbors, a dismay to my acquaintances. When they see me in the street, they avoid me. Like the dead, I am forgotten, out of mind. I am as useless as a broken pot. For I have heard the whispering of the crowd. Fear is all around. They put their heads together against me. They plot to take my life. But as for me, I have trusted in you, O Lord. I have said, you are my God. My times are in your hand. Rescue me from the hand of my enemies and from those who persecute me. Let your face shine upon your servant. Save me in your steadfast love. Today's psalm provides an appropriate backdrop for Jesus' suffering and death, and so is a good psalm for Palm Sunday, the beginning of Holy Week. The psalm is a prayer by one who suffers unjustly and in that suffering puts complete trust in God. The speaker takes on the role of the suffering servant. And like the servant in Sunday's first reading from Isaiah, this psalm reports that he or she completely trusts in God, yet is rejected by the people. This combination of trust and rejection makes the passage well suited for Palm Sunday, also sometimes called the Passion Sunday, because of Jesus' suffering at the end of Holy Week. Today's psalm begins and ends with petitions for God's favor and protection. Verse 9 opens with a cry to God to be gracious, for I am in distress. The word translated as distress derives from a verb meaning to bind or to be restricted. The noun communicates the idea of being in dire straits with no humanly possible way to escape. Verses 9b and 10, so essentially the second half of 9 and then 10, gives a litany of symptoms of this distress that suggest sickness, depression, perhaps even persecution. And this mixture of references is typical of the Psalms, in which the psalmist petitions God for help, for rescue. And there's an open-endedness to this list of symptoms that allows us to identify with the psalmist and also gives us the opportunity to use this kind of psalm, the words here, to lift up our own circumstances to God with no specifics or even putting in our own specifics. The psalmist is overtaken with the forces of death that rack the body and the spirit and allows enemies to have their way. The psalmist asks God to intervene, to transform the situation, and uses the words, rescue me, in verse 15. So the psalmist assumes this is a problem for God to deal with, outside of our human potential to solve it, and that the very fact that the psalmist is distressed is reason for God to take action. Verse 11 reads, I am the scorn of all my enemies, a disgrace to my neighbors, a dismay to my acquaintances. When they see me in the street, they avoid me. This was Jesus' experience during that last part of what we call Holy Week. He lived faithfully in dependence on God, yet he ended up being despised and rejected. These two features in the psalm of complaint and petition provide this grand illustration in the verse that Jesus cites from the cross, "Into your hands I commit my spirit." The psalmist complains of having an experience that is supposed to be the experience of the wicked. Verse 12 reads, "Like the dead I am forgotten, out of mind. I am as useless as a broken pot." The psalmist voices complete trust in God despite the dire circumstances, despite the feeling of being treated as one who is wicked. The psalmist declares trust in the Lord and declares, "You are my God," which is to say, you control my life. Verse 15 uses the word hand as in being in the hand of God, and this refers to the power and the authority described to the point of where comes the psalmist's hope, being in the hand of God. The psalmist acknowledges that he or she has no power to affect the future. That power is God's alone. Verse 16 then concludes the passage with two petitions that are common in all of the Psalms. Let your face shine. And this really evokes the priestly blessing that we find in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, verse 25, in which Aaron, the high priest, calls on God's favor for the Israelites. References to the light of God's countenance or face, the shining of God's face, come in different psalms, are common descriptions of receiving God's favor. Well, the Israelites believed they could not literally see the face of God. They thought if they saw the face of God literally, they would die. So this language may refer to a light somewhat like the rays of the sun, and a light that symbolizes God's protection and care. Our own benediction during worship on Sunday mornings has similar words. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The second half of verse 16 petitions God to save me in your steadfast love. The typical meaning of steadfast in petitioning God is for God to remember the covenant that God made with his people and to keep the promises that God made, even though God's people often break their promises. So the psalmist here appeals to God's character as just and faithful, as one who does not abandon those who rely on him. This Palm Sunday, as we enter Holy Week and contemplate Jesus' suffering, we can read this psalm and relate to it as maybe even the prayer of Jesus, the one who placed his Spirit in the protective power of God. Thank you for joining me today as we continue this journey along toward Palm Sunday, the 28th of March, 2021. I hope you're having a great day. Take care, and God bless, and may God make his face to shine upon you. Amen.